Good afternoon. I'm County Executive George Latimer, and I'm here with Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins and the Chairman of the Board of Legislators, Ben Boykin. Also with us today is Westchester County Legislator David Tubiolo, who represents sections of Yonkers and Mount Vernon, and we may be joined by other county legislators as well. We have our Deputy Director of Operations with us, Emily Saltzman, other members of our executive team, Chief of Staff of the Board of Legislators, Dennis Power, is here, and a number of other folks. We appreciate you coming. The intent of this is to give you an update of where we are with both the recovery from the windstorm of Friday. They've named it Riley, so Windstorm Riley, and the upcoming snowstorm that we're expecting to start this evening. This is a very difficult time. Westchester residents are without power. Those who have been so now 4 nights, and some of them face the prospects of it being a 5th night, and so forth. And to top it off, we have this major snowstorm coming our way. For those who are without power, the statistics that we have at this point, Con Edison reports that it has 26,889 customers without power in Westchester. We believe that number is probably 12 noon, top of the hour number. That's down from 38,613 yesterday. So it's about 10,000 people brought online. We've certainly heard anecdotal stories of more people being back online in both Con Edison and in the NYSEG turf. But again, 26,800 plus customers still out in Con Edison. NYSEG reports that it has 15,654 customers who are without power. That's down from 19,802 yesterday. Now that's very concerning because that represents only an improvement of 4,200 customers that are back on after yesterday's efforts. We obviously have all day today until the weather starts to turn on us. That gives us the balance of this day to get more people on board. Everyone in county government is working tirelessly in concert with local governments to try to do what we can do to make sure that this situation is minimized. We're monitoring Con Ed and NYSEG's progress, and we've been very critical of both utility companies. We've called on them to call more workers. We've called on them to reach out and to have not only mutual aid, but also to deploy their workers in the most efficient means possible. For example, we understand that NYSEG's deployment involves teams of individuals that work 17 hours, when in fact, if they change their shifts to 12-hour shifts, then they could work all day, all night long by having 2 separate shifts. And this is a very difficult redeployment, but it's a necessary redeployment because we are looking at heading into a snowstorm when you aggregate the 2 numbers of 41,000 customers without power heading into what could be a 10-inch snowstorm. And people will legitimately say, who is going to pay for my broken pipes? Who is going to handle all of the difficulties that could happen if we have a young child at home, if we have a senior citizen at home? These are serious issues. And I think that as we put pressure on these utilities, we have to go back and understand that before power can be reestablished, it begins with the utility company, professional utility worker, being deployed, shut off the power lines, make sure they're not live. Then the municipal source can come in, the DPW persons can come in to remove the impediment, the fallen tree, the fallen telephone pole, the pole, whatever that is. And the County Department of Public Works has assisted in that process. As we speak today, the county DPW workers are assisting the town of Cortland in removing some of those impediments. And the county DPW's responsibilities are the Bronx River Parkway and county-owned facilities, but we've taken them off of whatever damage has happened in a county park to put them where they're most needed, which is with municipal DPW to try to clear the path to try to make the reestablishment of power possible. And then the third piece of this is for the utility workers then, and using bucket trucks to reestablish the power connection. And we must be clear, some of the reestablishment of power is intended to be a temporary fix and a permanent fix to follow. And we're going to go into a snowstorm with temporary fix. So I think the area of accountability is still very much open in terms of where the utilities are and what they have to answer to. Governor Cuomo himself earlier today said that this response by the 2 utilities is absurd. There are other utilities as well involved in the statewide picture, but he called it absurd. And our concern about it is such that both the governor has indicated through the PSC that he's going to have a full study of what the preparedness was, and he's going to call in the various top officials and question them aggressively on why they made the decisions they did. And Chairman Boykin and the Board of Legislators intends to do the same thing because they have had outraged residents reach out to them and put pressure on them as to what they can do. And of course, whatever happens in the after the fact situation, we will get through this. And when we get through this and we look ahead, we want to know and have some confidence. Is this going to happen again and again and again? We went through Superstorm Sandy 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago. In that particular storm, I was without power for 7 days. We survived it. It was a different time of the year. When a hurricane comes through, it comes through oftentimes in an August or September timeframe. The temperatures are more temperate, warmer. This time, we're having this happen in the wintertime with a snowstorm coming, and serious, more permanent damage can come out of this. And that's why this is important. And I've been very harsh in my comments about the utilities, specifically because the urgency is so great. It's not just that people are angry. Yes, they're angry, but they're angry and we're facing a very severe deadline when the snow starts to fall. Both companies have to do a lot more. And I would also encourage Con Edison, in fact, both companies, but I'd encourage Con Edison to review their customer alert system. The alert system is flawed. We have had numerous stories of people getting phone calls saying your electricity is back on, when in fact it wasn't. Or your electricity will be on at such and such a specific time, and then it wasn't, it was done sooner. And whatever the mechanism is by which they inform people, the lack of information and misinformation is part of what frustrates the consumers. Now, we talked a couple of days ago about the Friday night lack of communication by NYSEG. So that particular issue was resolved going forward. But what wasn't resolved was their realistic estimation of the time it took to put people back online. Because you project numbers and then you can't reach those numbers. You raise expectations unnecessarily, and people are more frustrated when they're targeting toward a Monday night restoration or a Tuesday night restoration, and now we're hearing stories about Thursday or Friday night. I'd like to know how you're going to restore in the middle of a snowstorm. These things. So basically what you're saying is the snowstorm's going to have to come and go through, which will be a day and a half reality, and then sometime on Thursday, as we start to clear away all this snow, then you're going to restart the process of restoration, which is very difficult to imagine. The realities is that there's a human face to all of these things. Ken Jenkins and myself, and I know Ben and all of the members of the Board of Legislators have been out in our communities. I'd have to add to this the mayors and the supervisors of every community, doesn't matter the political party, the state legislators who I've been in contact with. Every single one of us have been out in our communities. I went out this morning. I met with a woman who contacted us. She has a son with MS. She's been without power for the next 4 days. And she asked me at her front door, what am I going to do when the snow comes? What am I going to do when the inside temperature of my house, which is about 50 degrees now, drops down into the 20s? The realities are, first of all, what can we do in the short term? Well, the first thing is, if you have power, and this is common sense, I almost am embarrassed to say this, if you have power and you have a neighbor or friend that you know doesn't, give them a helping hand. Invite them over. If you can accommodate them overnight, do that if you can. Obviously, do that for your family members at the very least, if you do have power, because now we're going from what is inconvenient to what could be a very dangerous situation. And if you don't have power, take the resources that are made available to you, whether they're the resources of a friend or a neighbor or those resources which are being provided by the community. I will tell you that I've done a round of some, not all, but of some of the warming centers. I know Ken has been to some of these as well, and I'm pretty confident the legislators have. And there's a varying degree. In Armonk and North White Plains, Bedford, and Somers have been a lot of folks using the warming facilities. But in other parts of the county, there have not been. Now, that may be the degree of their need or the degree of the severity of their situation. But those warming centers are created, and there is a cost involved. You're putting personnel and so forth on board, but they are a center of respite. And now as we go into a more dangerous period of time, I think it's important for people to understand these are the things that we can do. We've opened up the county center for the first time in 15 years as a center for warming purposes, and we're contemplating if we go further than that, whether that's possible or realistic or not. But people have to take advantage of them as well. So this is not the time to sit on pride or whatever else might be motivating you. But those warming stations are important. And at the county center, look, we're going to have coffee. There's space for the kids to run around and play. It's been a long time since I've been a young parent, but for those of you who have young kids, you're going to need that. I think we have movies going on over there. I'm not sure what we're playing. But the bottom line is that it's a place for moms and dads to be able to take your kids. It's going to be open to 10 o'clock tonight, and then we're going to see where we go over the next couple of days. Let me compliment our new county Director of Consumer Protection, Jim Maisano, former member of the Board of Legislators. In the brief week that he's been on board, he's jumped into issues to make sure that residents do not fall victim to illegal price gouging. It's unfortunate that people try to use this moment for advantage, but in some gas stations and some hotels, prices spike when they think they have a demand, and they have people in a vulnerable situation that they must have things in a momentary notice. So he is monitoring that. The department can be reached at 995-2155, and if there are any incidents, Jim will advance preceding them, and if we believe we've got legal action to take, we will take that. I compliment him for taking that energy as one other complementary effort. The county Parks Department has used the Playland parking lot as a staging area for all of the out-of-town teams that have come in. I've gone down there on a couple of occasions now. I've met some of the fellows who are in. It happens to be all men that I've seen, although some of the staff people who are organizing them from Con Edison are both men and women. But the folks that I've seen that have come in from Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, Quebec, they are doing us a big neighborly favor. And if you do see them, be appreciative of their efforts. I've gone down to thank them and to spend a little time with them. But that whole Playland area, Playland parking lot area, has been set aside for staging area. And so in that regard, for anybody who would have a reason to go down to Playland in the next 48, 72 hours, try not to do that. Let the folks do what they have to do down there appropriately. But that is something that we're certainly contributing to the cause. Our County Emergency Operations Center in Hawthorne is established in order to serve as a link between these various agencies. For the handful of you that may have been there, it is an opportunity, depending on the degree of crisis, to put people from all the different entities there, the utilities and the various governmental police forces and so forth, so they can communicate with each other instantaneously. And that's what you need in a situation like this. You need the quick, fluid communication between different entities so that they get a clear message. That is open as we stand now. It has been open through the weekend. It will continue to be open through the storm. And I would also indicate that we issued a state of emergency message under the authority given to the county executive on Sunday. We wanted to be sure to see what happened on Saturday. Would we have enough response? Obviously, that wasn't the case. As Sunday advanced, we weren't getting far enough along, so we've established a state of emergency. It does grant us some additional powers. We haven't used many of them yet, but we have the power to impose a curfew if we think that would be helpful in all of this. And we also hope that this will trigger some federal money in due time from FEMA because this is a crisis beyond just a normal one. But that order continues through the weekend, and we'll lift it only when we're sure that we're past the emergency of both the power outage and then also cleaning up for the storm. We're going to share information with all of our partners in government. We're trying very hard in this administration to govern collegially, across party lines, across governmental lines, to basically have those of us who you put into public office at any level working in harmony toward a certain goal. The county itself will make a decision on the airport, whether it stays open tomorrow, depending on weather conditions. The classic comment is always call and check with your carriers, because whether the airport is open or not, individual carriers may decide to cancel. They make decisions on airplanes whether they're going to fly them in the morning to be usable to fly out, and if they decide that that's not what they're going to do, depending on the widespread nature of the snowstorm that's coming in and what other major airports it hits, there may be a slew of cancellations at the airport. But we'll try to have information to you whenever we have it if the airport is scheduled to be closed. The Beeline bus system will operate most assuredly on snow routes, which means, as one example, in Yonkers and Nodine Hill, it's a very steep incline. The normal routes that the bus takes cannot negotiate that kind of a steep incline, so there's an alternate route. People who travel the route regularly know that. So assuredly, if the system is running tomorrow, that's going to be the focus. We want to try to keep that running that way, but we'll make a decision if something else happens, and we'll certainly let you all know, because this is the fastest way for the people of Westchester County to get a message. If you have a reason to go to the correctional facilities in Westchester County as a visit to an inmate, call ahead, because the shift structure there under snow circumstances, they may cancel all visits tomorrow, and certainly we don't know yet how we're going to handle our workforce in the county. We have a significant workforce, and if we're in the middle of a snow situation, we and every other major employer in the county are going to determine if we want to bring our workforce through the snow and difficult situation to come into work. So the best example is to call ahead. Our DPW crews are out there pre-treating the roads now to try to make it as passable as possible. We, the county, are responsible for the plowing of the Bronx River Parkway. The local governments have most of the rest of the roads to handle. The state has some role to play in all of that, and hopefully all of that will mesh together as well as possible. So as best as I can tell you, that's the update of where we are for 1 o'clock today. We're going to continue to press and monitor these things. We're working through our Director of Communications, Catherine Chaffee, and her team to try to provide information to you as soon as we have it. We've been very active on social media, both the Westchester County government Facebook page and Twitter feed and all the things that I had to learn how to accept as a person in the 60s. That is now the way that everybody communicates. I'm doing the same thing. Each of us in our own way are doing that to try to reach out. And then also that we're out in the community as well. And as I said earlier, each of us in elective office have been out trying to talk to people in our towns and our cities and our villages to hear what there is to hear. So with all of that, that's how we stand at the moment. We're happy to take any questions if you have any questions. Yes, ma'am.
What do you say to people, we've been meeting people today who are elderly or who have pets and can't easily leave their home and they're worried that tonight they're not going to have power, maybe the next night as well? What should they be doing? And obviously they're very concerned.
Well, the first line of action obviously is those who are relatives or neighbors. And if they can provide the accommodations they need, maybe they haven't felt the need to use it yet while it was still tolerable. You can get by at some level of temperature, and as the temperature drops with the snow, that may not be possible. So that's the first line. The second line, I would say, are heading to the warming stations, the warming centers. We have not decided that they're an all-night affair yet, but they are a daytime respite, and you can spend a serious amount of time there. I don't think we have precluded pets from our warming center. Do we know? As far as, let me tell you, I'll make an executive decision. Bring your pets. I'm a dog kind of guy anyway, so a couple of them. And so that's important. But I would say certainly if you have a relative that is either young or old or impacted by health situations, take action right now. Don't wait until 11 o'clock tonight or 2 o'clock in the morning when the situation becomes difficult. Certainly give us a call through the county, and if we can be helpful to you, we'll apply good old-fashioned constituent services and figure out how best to help that individual. It's tricky because the pattern of lights on and lights off is very different. I've been down streets where some of the houses were on, a couple of houses had generators and were on, and some were out. The circle loop covers the corner but not the intersection, so it's almost impossible to try to predict what's going to go on when. So, people should take whatever prudent decision they can, reach out to us. And then all factors being equal, reach out to your local police department, which is the one singular 24/7 operation in every community. Yes?
Can you identify at this point which towns and municipalities are considered still to be the hardest hit, still the hardest impacted from the storm?
Well, we've started throughout the course of this time with Somers and Yorktown leading the way with the highest problems and the lowest amount of return on schedule. I don't have at my fingertip a breakdown, but I've seen numbers in Somers and Yorktown that were above 75% out with the original situation. Now, how much of the restoration has occurred in Somers and Yorktown, I can't say. Pound Ridge was particularly hard hit, from my understanding. There were other places that were hit hard, but for whatever reason, when you go to the more highly populated areas, more densely populated areas, even if they're suburban density, not urban density, the places that more like Larchmont, they're easier to restore more people with a single action. When you go to the more rural parts of the county, a single action, a half a day, 3/4 of a day effort may only put on a handful of users because of how it is. And then I also think by the numbers that I read earlier on, just the raw numbers at NYSEG are just much lower than what they are with Con Ed. Neither one has performed. Let me back up. The individuals who are doing the work for NYSEG and Con Edison are heroes. They are out there doing a terrific job, and I don't want anything to reflect on them. And there are many other people that we're interacting with in both of those organizations that are doing their best to communicate with us. But at the top, wherever the decisions are being made or not made, is where the failure is here. And obviously, you know, something happens in county government, ultimately it's going to be my failure. It's not going to belong to anybody else but me at the top of the pyramid. And that's the same for the circumstances, I think, in these agencies. And when I see NYSEG's performance, they promised us, and I even said this on Sunday, I don't know if any of you were at the Sunday conference that I had over at the EOC. They gave us numbers. NYSEG said 90% of the people are going to be up on Monday. Con Ed said 90% of the people are going to be up on Tuesday. I said I doubt that these numbers are correct, even as I read them. Why? Because I'd been traveling around. And I could sense empirically how close we were to solving those problems. And we're getting calls still coming in from people who've said this is day 4, day 5. So as it's turned out now, they pushed those deadlines back. That's a sign not only of being unprepared, but being unable to properly predict how fast your teams are moving. So not only did you underestimate the problem beforehand, but as you're solving the problem, you're underestimating the complexity of the problem. And I've served in corporate America. That kind of a performance in my life in corporate America gets me fired. You know, they fire me for something like that. They say, what's your prediction? We'll be back online in 24 hours, boss. And when you're not, you said it, you made the assessment, you're out. So I'm just expressing the frustration that people are expressing by not having power and by not seeing the entity reach goals that they set themselves.
Do you think they called mutual aid far too late in this case?
I think they underestimated the severity of the storm, and that may be something that many of us did. You know, many times we hear, like the boy who cried wolf, oh, it's going to be a bad storm. But the average person can make any decision they want. The person who's head of a utility company has to be able to look at this and say, you know what, we're going into a weekend. Conceivably, we have less staff on board on a weekend. I presume that's the case. That seems logical to presume. Let us beef up our weekend status, just in case this thing turns out to be. Let's figure out how far out is our mutual aid going to come from. You look at the scope of the storm. Well, the storm is going to hit Pennsylvania, so we're going to have to go to further out in the Midwest. Maybe, since it's 1,000 miles from Green Bay to New York, maybe we better call them and say, guys, be on notice. We may need you, and we may need to get you here by Saturday if that's possible. Can you put the wheels in motion? If you're waiting until Friday night when you're hearing about 1,000 places down, and then you're calling for mutual aid, or first thing Saturday morning, you've already missed the opportunity. And the weekend was the best opportunity to be able to deal with this, to have the forces in place, to have an aggressive Saturday and an aggressive Sunday reestablishment of power was the best opportunity. I don't doubt that yesterday they made progress. That should have been the third day of progress, not the first day of progress. Yes, sir.
So I know you mentioned that Cuomo is going to investigate, kind of look into what happened with the response. In the meantime, have you guys asked for any additional aid ahead of tomorrow?
Yes, we have. All of us have pressed both NYSEG and Con Ed to put every available person on duty. I've mentioned already that we have tried to urge NYSEG to restructure the way they deploy their resources, to try to pattern to a 12-hour shift rather than a 17-hour shift, which means that when they're working somebody 17 hours and there's 7 hours that they go dark. If you reestablish it in a different fashion, you can have a team that go 12 hours and another team that go the other 12, and you're working around the clock. We've made these requests, or these, whatever you want to call them, demands perhaps, on these agencies. The governor has indicated that through the Public Service Commission, they're going to have aggressive hearings and they're going to hold accountability. And they have the power. The PSC is the legal power over the utility companies. And as I said, Chairman Boykin has established a date for a meeting in which he intends as well to investigate it from a Westchester perspective. The state obviously is going to look at an overall state situation because, as I'm sure you know, this isn't just Westchester. This is Putnam, this is Dutchess, this is Sullivan County and Ulster County and a host of other places that are equally affected by this. But the studying and the holding of accountability comes after the fact. Somebody who's cold tonight, somebody who's cold tomorrow night, somebody who has somebody that needs to be in a healthy environment isn't going to be comforted by what you do 3 weeks or a month from now in a public hearing. You got to have both. You got to have the midterm answer, but right now the short-term answer is all hands on deck all the way through. And by the way, when the snow starts to fall, I don't expect people to be able to go out in the middle of a heavy water content snow and reattach wires. We could very easily go a full day without any further action until the snow stops. Any other questions? Yes, Mark?
You mentioned the PSC, but you're calling the representatives in, and maybe the chairman wants to speak to it. I mean, can Westchester really do anything other than complain to the utilities?
Ben?
Well, clearly, we're complaining, the county executive is complaining. We will then have them in for what is called a committee of the whole, probably the week of the 19th, to come before us and talk about their unpreparedness to deal with a storm that, number one, we know was coming, and probably, as I read today, was probably the 5th largest storm we've ever had in this region. So we've got to put everyone on notice that this is unacceptable and being proactive, have the crews in place ready to go to start the remediation efforts immediately is what we need. And after Superstorm Sandy, the utility said we're going to do things so that we won't have this happen again. It's happened again. So we're going to be working very aggressively to bring them to the table and to have discussions with them about their poor response and how we move forward, because this is unacceptable to the residents of Westchester County.
Yes.
The power companies give you any kind of idea of like a new deadline? You said it was Monday and Tuesday. Did they say, Friday everybody will definitely be, did they give you any idea?
Yeah, I can't say I've heard a hard fact. I've seen things that talk about Thursday or Friday now. So let me just check and see if Thursday or Friday the difference. I'm not sure. Do we have for the 90% number, not 100% number? So pretty much when you see a Thursday and more likely a Friday deadline, that's been the revised deadline. They're accepting the fact that their original estimates were completely off. And as I said, I can't imagine they're going to get much done on a snowstorm Wednesday. The hope is that the snow will stop as it's expected to early on Thursday, and then after we dig out and we're doing electrical work at a time when there's going to be water and snow everywhere. That's very dangerous stuff, I suspect. So I think when they tell us Friday now, they may be being optimistic on that point. The thing is that and I went out to look. I'm no expert. I don't know how many of you are on electrical work. I don't profess to have an expertise on it. I look at a tree down, and I've seen 20, 30 spots so far over the course of from Friday night on. And I was out on Friday night looking at things, and others have as well. No, I'm not alone at this. And you look at this and you see the complication of it. I'm sure you felt this. You're driving down the street and the road's blocked, and you get out and you walk and you look and you see the wires are wrapped around the tree, and there's a limb, and there's this and there's that, and this is broken and that's broken. And you just think to yourself, how long would it take for me to clean up that mess? If I were with a utilities company, I'd understand, functionally how difficult that would be. But if I looked at that and then I had a report that there were 1,000 of these situations around the county, and I'd look at that and say, my God, this thing isn't going to be done for 4 or 5 days. How are we going to do this? I know how many crews I have out on the road right now. I know how many are being called in from out locations. So I have to question why they gave us the numbers they did on Sunday. As I said, I expressed doubt when I read them. And I read them. It was from a document that I got. I didn't stand behind the numbers. So, that's part of what this accountability is as well. Not just, did you anticipate it up front? How much of your people were staffed up and ready to go on Saturday? What the communication structure was with people. But then when you came up with targets on Sunday for Monday and Tuesday restoration, on what basis did you make those decisions? Because you're the homeowner. You make a decision based on what you're told. If I tell you your power's coming back on Monday, that's one set of decisions. If I say, here's the reality, probably Friday, you might make another set of decisions. And you might decide, I've got a relative in New Jersey. I'm not going to drive out there for one night. I can weather it out one night. I'm going to be gone 5 nights. Let me close up shop. Let me throw out the stuff in the refrigerator. That'll never survive 5 days. And you make prudent decisions based on what you're told. If what you're told is wildly inaccurate, being told Monday and then it's Friday, that's a wide gap. That's not a 24-hour gap. So these are all the things that have to be looked at and reviewed after the fact. Any other questions? Any other thing you have on your mind? Obviously, if you want to speak to any of the folks who are here individually, you're welcome to do that. I appreciate your time, and we'll let you know if we have any other follow-up information. We'll try to give you as much advance notice, so if you need to be here or someplace else, you can. Thank you very much for your time.